Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
First rule of Fight Club. You do not talk about Fight Club. But here at the Deep Dive, we're kind of all about breaking the rules, especially when it comes to, well, a film as impactful and I guess debated as this one.
It really is fascinating
Right.
how polarizing it is.
Yeah.
People don't just, have opinions on Fight Club. They have, fighting words about it.
Totally. You either see it as, this subversive masterpiece or this, dangerous glorification of violence. And that is exactly what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're not here to tell you what to think,
Right.
but rather to explore why this movie, even over 2 decades later, still sparks so much debate.
Yeah. And to do that, we're looking at a paper called, and I love this title, Fight Club, a homework assignment.
Which is perfect. Because to truly appreciate this film, you kind of need to go beyond, the surface level.
Mm-hmm.
It's like those hidden messages Tyler Durden splices into films. You miss a lot on the first watch.
Exactly. And this paper isn't so much about what happens in the movie,
Right.
the plot, but how it's told, the storytelling itself.
Okay.
And that's where this whole idea of, story versus plot comes in.
Okay, let's unpack that. It's film studies jargon, right? Help us out here.
Think of it this way. Story is everything that happens in the world of the film, even if we only get, hints and pieces. Plot is specifically what we see and hear on screen, the order in which it's presented to us.
Right.
Fight Club messes with this constantly. It makes you question, how much of what Jack is telling us is true?
Yeah.
How much is his perspective, warping reality?
Yeah. Which, knowing the twist, is a huge GE part of the experience. Take those subliminal appearances of Tyler early on.
Right.
I don't know about you, but on my first viewing, I was so caught up in Jack's world, I totally missed them.
Most people do. And that's Fincher playing with us. The paper points out how Tyler pops up, for just a frame or two, at the copy machine.
Oh, wow.
At the doctor's office. Even during that first support group meeting, it's like he's always lurking in the background of Jack's subconscious.
Whoa. It's like subliminal messaging, but for anarchy.
Wait.
And it completely changes how you see the film on a second watch. You realize those early hints of unease weren't just in your head.
Right.
They were planted there by the filmmaker himself.
Exactly. And it's not just the visuals. Even the marketing for Fight Club played with our expectations.
Oh, totally. It's like the studio couldn't decide whether they were selling a testosterone-fueled action flick or a, psychological thriller. Remember those early posters?
Absolutely. On one hand, you've got, shirtless Brad Pitt, bloody knuckles looking ready to brawl, pure visceral marketing.
Which on the surface makes sense. It is called Fight Club, after all.
Right.
But then you have those other posters, the ones the paper describes, with Edward Norton front and center. This, haunted look in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's staring into the abyss, or maybe, into his own fractured reflection.
And that duality is key because it mirrors the experience of watching the film itself.
Mm-hmm.
You go in expecting one thing and bam, you get hit with something far more complex, far more unsettling.
Yeah.
No wonder people had such strong reactions.
It's like going to a carnival expecting a fun house of mirrors and stumbling into a philosophy lecture.
Right.
Speaking of which, let's dive a little deeper into one of the film's most prominent themes: consumerism.
And there's no better place to start than with Jack's apartment.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a living space. It's this carefully curated catalog of his own emptiness.
Right. It's like he's trying to buy happiness one IKEA catalog item at a time.
Yeah.
The paper talks about this connection between his possessions and his desire for, a prepackaged identity.
Yeah.
If he just gets the right stuff, he'll finally feel complete.
Which, of course, couldn't be further from the truth. And the film brilliantly visualizes that disconnect in the scene where his apartment explodes.
Okay, so on my first watch, I'll admit I thought it was just a really bad case of bad neighbors. But the paper suggests something much deeper is going on.
They argue that the explosion is symbolic of Jack's carefully constructed life falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
All those possessions, that meticulously curated identity literally going up in smoke.
Which is interesting because right after that, he ends up crashing at Tyler's place. And if Jack's apartment is a shrine to consumerism, Tyler's is like the anti-IKEA.
Right.
It's rundown, messy, almost uninhabitable. But it's also where Jack seems to come alive.
Exactly. And this is where the paper's analysis of story versus plot gets really interesting. We might see the apartment explosion as just a plot point, something that happens to move the story along. But on a deeper level, it's about Jack shedding that old superficial life. and embracing something more primal, more chaotic.
Which I guess is where Tyler Durden, the soap-making, chaos-embracing, id-driven Tyler Durden, truly enters the picture. And maybe we should press pause here for a second and unpack that whole id thing.
Good idea. Because understanding a bit of psychology helps unlock what Tyler represents, not just in the story, but within Jack himself. So the id, in like very simplified terms, is that primal part of our subconscious. It's driven by instinct, pleasure, immediate gratification. Think of it as a voice whispering, do it when you know you probably shouldn't.
And Jack, with his corporate job, his, carefully chosen furniture, he's all about repression, right? Like keeping those primal urges in check.
Exactly. He's trying so hard to fit into a world that tells him what to want, how to behave, even how to furnish his apartment.
Right.
And that's where Tyler comes in. He's the embodiment of everything Jack has suppressed.
Which explains why Tyler's so magnetic, not just for Jack, but for all the other guys in Fight Club. They're drawn to his, raw, unapologetic embrace of instinct and rebellion.
Precisely. He offers them a release, a way to break free from the monotony and the meaninglessness they feel in their lives. Of course, as the film shows us, that kind of unchecked, eye-driven behavior can have some pretty disastrous consequences.
To put it mildly. But before we get to Project Mayhem and, all the chaos that ensues, there's another character we need to talk about. Marla Singer. Because the paper makes a really interesting point. No Marla, no Tyler.
Absolutely. She's a catalyst for Jack's transformation. Remember that first support group meeting they both attend? Jack's whole world is thrown off kilter.
Right. She sees through his facade, and her presence forces him to confront his own, emotional numbness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like she awakens something in him, something he both craves and fears.
And that's why Tyler tries so hard to keep them apart. He even splices images of himself over Marla's face in those home movies Jack finds. It's creepy, sure, but it also speaks to that idea of Tyler trying to control Jack's access to genuine human connection.
It's like he knows that if Jack gets too close to Marla, if he allows himself to feel something real, his whole, carefully constructed world will come crashing down. And in a way, it does.
Speaking of crashing down, that scene where Jack's describing his power animal during a support group meeting always stuck with me.
Oh, you mean where the camera zooms in on his face? And we see this, fleeting glimpse of a primal being in a cave. I remember thinking, whoa, where are we going with this?
Right. Fincher uses this really interesting visual cue, that tight zoom, to signal a shift from, objective reality to Jack's subjective experience. It's like we're being pulled into his fractured psyche, but then, just as quickly, we're pulled back out. The power animal never appears again.
It's like Fincher is playing with our expectations. He sets up this rule, this, visual language, then breaks it, just like he breaks all those other cinematic rules throughout the film. And that's part of what makes Fight Club so effective. It keeps us off balance, just like Jack.
Exactly. And this ties back to the paper's central argument. Fight Club isn't just a movie. It's an experience designed to make you question everything you're seeing, everything you think you know.
Right.
And that includes questioning the nature of reality itself.
Which brings us to that final, unforgettable image. The buildings exploding as the credits roll. It's stunning, but also, deeply unsettling. Are we seeing Jack and Marla finding some kind of freedom amidst the chaos? Or are we witnessing the birth of something far more destructive?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the paper doesn't give us a definitive answer, but it does offer one final thought-provoking detail. Remember that spliced-in image of a penis right before the credits?
Oh, yeah. Classic Fincher. Most people just laugh it off as, a last-minute shock tactic.
But the paper suggests it could be Tyler, messing with the film itself, even after Jack thinks he's gone.
Meaning, even in his supposed moment of clarity, even as he seemingly takes control of his life, a part of Tyler, that impulsive, chaotic energy, might still be lurking within him.
Exactly. And that's what makes Fight Club so brilliant, so endlessly fascinating to unpack. It's a film that stays with you long after the credits roll, prompting you to question not just the story, but your own place within the systems it critiques.
It's almost like that one final frame is a reminder that we can never fully erase those darker impulses. They're always there, just beneath the surface. Which makes me think about Bob, the large man with sweaty tits from the support groups.
Bob. He goes from, seeking solace in fake tears to finding a genuine connection in Fight Club, only to, meet a tragic end.
And his death is a turning point for Jack, right? It's what finally pushes him to confront Tyler and try to dismantle Project Mayhem. But if we're taking this paper's idea to heart, that so much of the film is metaphorical, how do we interpret Bob's death?
It's a question that has sparked endless debate among fans. And the paper actually brings up a really interesting point. Even within the film, there are multiple interpretations of what Bob represents.
Okay, so walk us through it. What are some of the different ways we can read his character and his ultimate fate?
On one hand, Bob represents that sense of community, that raw, unfiltered brotherhood that Jack finds in Fight Club. Remember, before the fighting, before Project Mayhem, it was just a bunch of guys beating each other up, but also connecting in a way they couldn't anywhere else.
Totally. Like that scene where they're all standing around the campfire sharing stories. It's messed up, sure, but there's also this weird sense of camaraderie.
Exactly. So from that perspective, Bob's death could be interpreted as Jack realizing the cost of that community, of that blind embrace of Tyler's philosophy. It's like he's finally acknowledging that this path, this descent into chaos, leads to nothing but destruction.
Which, let's be real, Project Mayhem is not exactly known for its stellar safety record.
To say the least. And that's the other way to read Bob's death, as a critique of the very ideology that Fight Club at its most extreme represents, this idea that the only way to rebel against a broken system is to tear everything down, even if it means hurting, or in Bob's case, killing, the very people you claim to be liberating.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but you're right. The film doesn't shy away from the fact that actions have consequences, and that even with the best intentions, things can go horribly wrong. Which brings us back to that final image of the buildings exploding. It's not a clear-cut victory, is it?
Not at all. And that's the genius of Fight Club. It forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths, those gray areas where there are no easy answers.
So where do we leave things? What's the takeaway? The so what of all this, deep diving?
Well, I think the next time you watch Fight Club, and I have a feeling there will be a next time, pay attention to those layers beneath the surface. Notice how Fincher uses the filmmaking itself to challenge your perceptions.
Right. Don't just watch the movie, experience it, question everything. Look for those hidden messages, both within the film and within yourself.
And maybe, just maybe, by confronting the darker impulses of our own Tyler Durdens, we can find a way to channel that energy, not into chaos and destruction, but into something more constructive, more meaningful.
Who knew a deep dive into Fight Club would lead to such profound insights? It's almost enough to make you want to start your own questionable Fight Club. Almost.
Let's stick to discussing them, shall we? Leave the soap-making and basement brawling to Jack and Tyler.
Agreed. But hey, if you do happen to have a support group for people who overanalyze movies, let me know. There's a good chance I qualify.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.